All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. And thank you for joining us today. My name is Charity Martin King, and I am the co-chair for Region 2 as we discuss the Columbus City Schools Facilities Master Plan. Thank you for joining us for the Envision phase of the conversation and planning. My role is to take us through the agenda, and then we will have some breakout sessions, etc. Right now, I'm going to ask that you keep your cameras on, but your microphones on mute. We want to be able to hear you, but when we get into the breakout sessions. So please keep your cameras on if you're able, and your microphones on mute until the breakout session. If you have some questions or things that you want answered or would like to pose, please feel free to use the chat feature of the Zoom or whatever you are on for this particular evening. Please use the chat feature and we'll try to answer those. And if we do not have an answer, we will make sure we record that for the next time. I'd also like to remind everyone to please exercise grace. We are all a part of this process, grace, giving everyone an opportunity to voice their concerns, remain positive, and acknowledge when we don't have an answer. Be considerate and respectful of one another's time, and to remember, everyone, we are in this together. So please exercise some grace. And thank you for joining us. Our student lead is also on, Madison Hughes, and will be assisting us this evening. So good evening, Madison. Thank you for joining us tonight. At this time, I am going to introduce our area superintendent, Dr. Corey Grubb, Dr. Grubb, and our Board of Education member, James Raglin, who is on with us tonight. We also will have a member of the architectural team, Mike Nicholson, who will give us a presentation this evening from Battelle for Kids. So at this time, I'd like to welcome board member James Raglin.
Good evening, Charity, and good evening, Region 2. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Madison. Thank you, Jawanza, our leadership team for this process. I am excited. We had a really good meeting last month in which we talked about all sorts of things related to facilities, but today we're going to be going through our envisioning process. This process is aligned with our CCS portrait of a graduate. We went through and talked with a lot of folks throughout this city about what they wanted to see from CCS graduates. And so we're going to take a deeper dive into that process today. Please feel free to speak freely to our architectural team and to our program leads this afternoon. And I am just thrilled to have Dr. Corey Grubbs, who leads our area, our region in Region 2. Dr. Grubbs is joining us remotely today because he's got a family engagement that he's got to get to, but I am excited to have him here all the way from Canton, Ohio. Dr. Grubbs, please say hello, sir.
Mr. Raglin.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and good evening, Region 2. I certainly am excited to welcome everyone here this evening. Thank you for being here to help facilitate the conversation, Region 2. I just want to tell you briefly, real quick, Region 2, we have about 19 schools, 3 high schools, 5 middle schools, and 11 elementary schools. And I'm excited to continue to work and do the good work for our students and families and communities on the east side of Columbus City Schools. So thank you all for being here, for being present, and for engaging in this conversation. We truly and certainly appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grubbs. And we really appreciate you taking the time to join us this evening. I look forward to a rich conversation. Today, I'm going to be jumping in and out of our breakout sessions, hearing from all of you. So please speak freely. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mrs. King. Thank you for leading us this evening.
Thank you, board member Raglin. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Grubbs, for joining us. Safe travels there to you. At this time, we are going to view a video portrait of a graduate. So we can sit back and take a look at the video.
Now that we have a portrait of a graduate in place, then we as a district will have to stop doing some things that we were doing in the past. The portrait would be front and center. These are the 6 attributes that we are going to ensure that when our students graduate, that they are able to master. The first pillar is adaptability. To me, adaptability means how do our students interact in adverse environments. We are in a country now where there are so many different people from so many different places. The beauty of learning from one another and how we can solve those problems together. The next pillar is communication. How do we make sure that our students can express themselves? Our students have to be able to ask questions, ask for feedback, and really getting students to understand that your voice matters. The next pillar is creativity. Our students can come up with multiple ways of addressing our problems, and to learn and at their own pace, you have to create that space for creativity to happen. And it has to emerge, I believe, in that manner. The next pillar is critical thinking. It is important for my students to understand thinking about a problem in a very complex way starts to build those critical thinking skills, and it allows students to know that I don't have to have all the answers right now, but I can think about it and build upon what I believe the answer will be. The next pillar is global empathy. How do we get students to understand that what they may see happen to another student or even to their neighbor, how do we feel? How does that make us feel when we see injustice happening, when we see poverty happen? What does that feel like? And not just locally in Columbus, but around the world. We all should be using technology as a lever to advance our students' opportunities. We as an organization, we are going to use technology to make sure that students have access to curriculum wherever they are. We want to be a district that when our students graduate, they can demonstrate those 6 attributes. That's what's important to us right now, to make sure that our students have an opportunity to lead. We have to be student first. And I think that's where the magic happens, is that we're doing it not just for our students, we're doing it with our students, and student voice matters.
Good evening, everyone. Pardon me. My name is Dennis Pabin, and I'm with Leggett Architects. I am part of the design and planning team that is partnering with Columbus City Schools and the community to help put together the facility master plan. On behalf of everyone at Columbus City Schools and the Board of Education, thank you for participating in this second session of your region's facility master plan community engagement discussions. I would like to review the process. The 5-step collaborative master plan process includes the phases gather, envision, define, consider, and transform. The community engagement process is a crucial part of creating the master plan. Each step of this process is to create a consensus of community values and full and clear understanding of the community's expectations, learning environments. Notice that the first 3 phases are problem defining and the second 2 are problem solving. What this means is we're not designing anything until we've gone through the steps to help understand what is needed to start conceptualizing what the plan can be. The process started in April 2021 and is scheduled to be completed in December 2021. Your input in these community discussions will be the foundation of the facility master plan that will be reviewed by Columbus City Schools Board of Education, Administration, and staff. Approval of the master plan is scheduled for March of 2022. In April for the gather phase, we completed a survey, participated in regional community discussions as we are doing now. And the Facility Master Plan Committee convened to discuss the successes and barriers to learning in the existing school buildings of Columbus City Schools. There were many items that were revealed in the discussions and relating to what is working or not working within your school district. This month is the Envision phase. The second phase of the process starts the discussion of how successes can be elevated and the barriers can be addressed within your schools. The discussions we will be having tonight, later in the Zoom breakout rooms for the Envision phase, will lead to a program of space and place within the schools. This program will be used to start establishing the master plan concepts in the future community discussions for later in the fall of 2021. The master plan phase is to envision your goals and aspirations for the future of your learning environments. Additionally, this is the time in the process for all of us to understand the purpose and mission of Columbus City Schools. Together, we will imagine how that purpose can be transformed into place. Some of the items to keep in mind as you enter your breakout rooms tonight are highlighted here, as you see on the screen. Establishing goals and expectations, develop an understanding of your culture, explore your mission and how it can embody place. And this is exceptionally true in the video we just saw through A Portrait of a Graduate. And then lastly, imagine the future potential of your district. Finally, in this presentation, you will see a series of images and concepts. In the breakout room discussions this evening, I encourage you to also reflect on what you see and how they may or may not be successful to respond to the issues raised in both the gather phase, as well as the questions we'll be presenting during the presentation and how they reflect to the Portrait of a Graduate. Also, we will be moving, as we move forward with the presentation, you will see pop-up questions that as we start going through our presentation, and we ask that you respond to those, and we will be incorporating that data into the compilation of data for the Envision phase. Finally, the last component of the Envision phase is a survey that will be issued at the end of this month. For the gather presentation, we had at the beginning because for that particular step, we knew that information would help us lead the discussion. Now we feel that the content will help lead to the survey and get better quality responses.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Nicholson. I'm with Batalpa Kids. And as you might have heard, Batalpa Kids has partnered with Columbus City Schools in helping to develop their Portrait of a Graduate and their subsequent strategic plan, of which it's all part and parcel of the same process. I'm here to make, perhaps connect some dots. The Portrait of a Graduate, as you heard from Dr. Dixon, was an opportunity for the Columbus community to define for itself what it wanted for the outcomes for its students. And in doing that, there was actually an important shift that took place where they were broadening the notions of success, not doing away with content acquisition or the 3 hours, but actually broadening it so that we could open more doors for kids for success now and in the future. So if we think about historically the 3 hours or more exclusively content acquisition, the facilities as they were might have gotten by with being what they were. But now, since we are broadening the notion of success, extending what we need in the development of our kids for their successes now and in the future, it probably does warrant a serious reconsideration of what we want in our facilities. As you see towards the bottom of that slide in front of you, it's maybe a rebalancing of sorts, the rigid versus flexible structures, the closed versus the open spaces, the natural light versus artificial light, a compliant environment versus an empowering environment. You may be able to answer for yourself where we lied on that balance historically and where we need to go in the future to really open up the more dynamic outcomes we're looking for in our kids. The next slide, please. Perhaps among the most important considerations when you're thinking about facilities is how flexible they are. As you know, educators can't force learning out of kids, but they try to optimize the conditions to make learning more possible, so that the environment is more conducive to developing that learning. In order to do that, we probably need to give the educators as much flexibility as possible to set up those environments, set up those conditions for learning. One thing we know from motivation theory is that one of the biggest predictors of motivation is a sense of autonomy, is a sense of being able to have control over your short and long-term fate. Maybe one of the things we want to ask ourselves, how much does the environment invite and make conducive for the educators and the students to have that autonomy to create the conditions they need for learning? So I thank you for allowing me to maybe connect some dots, and I turn it back over to, I don't know if it's back to Dennis or Robin.
It's back to me, Mike. Thank you very much. Along those same lines, let's talk about some history. In the 19th century, classrooms can be considered as sparsely decorated and furnished, reflecting the frugality of the mostly rural times. All of the grades were taught in a single room by a single school teacher. The teacher was often younger than most of the students. And as mentioned by Mike, the 3 R's were the primary focus. Resources in early classrooms were very limited and consisted basically of a few books, chalk, and some slate. During the Industrial Revolution, the percentage of people working in agriculture plummeted as families started flocking to the cities due to the larger agriculture conglomerates being established. Owners of industry needed a workforce, and they looked to the public education and public schools to provide it. Schools were designed and organized like the factories that these students were supposed to employ. As our classrooms evolved from supported agrarian and industrialized classroom models, we must support the new changes in education. And these were covered in the points by Mike earlier. They need to support and involve a technology-based, creative, and critical thinking society in a model of collaboration. Along with the changes in the physical attributes of school came changes in the social construct of a school and what it means to a community. Equality and diversity in history before were just merely words. Today, those words are embraced and celebrated in the school community. This master plan is the preeminent opportunity to develop the children in our community into the global citizens who can thrive and lead and create the changes of the future. For the Envision phase, we wanted to specifically explore 3 pillars of a portrait of a graduate. We understand that this is the mission, and having this as the mission, we are going alongside of this to see how we can change our school facilities into supporting these pillars. The 3 pillars we're going to explore this evening: adaptability, communication, and global empathy. The definitions provided here are what have been issued by Columbus City Schools. These 3 pillars were specifically selected for this month, for the Envision phase, because they lend themselves to more conceptual conversation. The other 3 pillars will be discussed in the Define phase, because they tend to lead themselves to a more technical discussion and more specific in nature. You can wrap your head around defining a program in more space and place. For adaptability, our students will be agile in thoughts and actions, responding productively to positive and negative feedback while balancing diverse views to reach workable solutions. And when we think of, as design professionals, what does adaptability mean? We think of agility, an education without walls, with movable furniture, rooms and walls, and diversity, introverted and extroverted spaces, rooms that are designed to be specific to either large group or small group learning and embracing different learning styles. But back to the agility portion is, how can we make these changes easily and quickly? First slide we wanted to show you was how adaptability can be accustomed to an existing building. We all know that Columbus City Schools has several older buildings that we are looking, that we're going to explore all potentials of where we're going to facilitate these pillars and where we can achieve these outcomes. But if there are some in older facilities through different textures on the flooring and the ceiling, using the existing big windows that were required for ventilation back in when these buildings were built, and having furniture that's easily movable, flexible to accommodate different learning styles, group learning, and having the teacher be readily available to assist students where they need. Movable walls and relationships in spaces is an agile component. How can we make one space have one purpose, and then within a simple adjustment of a wall is now acclimated into a second? And also notice the acoustical treatments. We have these spaces that can be as big or as small of a presentation, so all of the senses are not disrupted. This is individualized and specialized learning in action. The students who need attention, the teacher's attention, are getting it. And you notice that the overhead doors and access to the hallways have another group of students that are working on a project by themselves. So again, the focus is in this particular construct of a classroom, that the idea of adapting to what the students' needs and how efficiently the teacher can accommodate those students' needs is what are being addressed. And also the idea of it being easy, the push of a button that these doors can open. We're not spending a lot of time and energy making these spaces be agile. They are easily and efficiently accommodating to what the teacher needs, how the teacher can best teach and the students can best learn. This is that same space from the opposite direction. So you can see how the space as a whole can accommodate larger or smaller groups. And this is also creating an opportunity for collaborative teaching, for team teaching, project-based learning. This space is, when we talked about adaptability, we've also talked about how it can be diverse. And here's your first poll question. Do you believe that learning should occur outside the classroom? This space that you see here, not only is it the circulation space you saw in the previous slide, but this is also the cafeteria, the mobile library, and the assembly space. So down below, where there's an opportunity for presentation, there's an opportunity for a mobile library, and this is where the students eat and assimilate throughout the day. Corridors can be used for so much more than just guiding students from one place to another. Diverse furnishings that allow for casual exchanges, privacy, but also feel part of a collective. So you can be seen as you're walking from one space to another. But also you have the opportunity for your privatized conversations and your individualized time for study. Spaces that are opportunistic. We have the large classroom for group learning, but in between bookshelves at the spot of the window, these students have found a place for quiet, for respite, to have a chance to take in a good book and enjoy some sunlight and some fresh air. This is also an ideal space for what we call introverted learners. So people that sometimes need a break from the classroom at whole, that you can have an opportunity to sit comfortably and quietly and just calm yourself as you need. Communication. Our students will effectively express thoughts and ideas using oral, written, and nonverbal skills while being active listeners, able to decipher meaning and intention. This goes back to what we discussed earlier and how we have different learning styles and how we can communicate amongst from student to student, teacher to student, and back to effectively accelerate the most and get the most potential out of that specific learner. And we have, in response to this for educational design, expressive and focused. Expressive, they can be traditional spaces, but they also can show the connection to the community. Here you see a lot of colors and fabric and texture. This building was actually designed to be a reduced auditorium. They had this auditorium, they wanted to upgrade it, and they made it smaller so they could address a more condensed group, but also allow for more flexible spaces on the other side. Here we go from a static space to a much more flexible space. This auditorium setting is next to the cafeteria, but also backs up to the gym. So the stage area can accommodate presentation to a noisy group, a small group, but also it has connection amongst the different styles of communication. And notice the flooring. The flooring is the leading the way, the connecting how these students can see. And there's a visual connection throughout all of these different spaces as well. Another expressive way of communication is creating spaces within the facility that provide different clashes of communication. So here you see a teacher having a quiet conversation amongst a couple of students. You see some students talking amongst themselves. And then this area in the back that has the presentation, the graph of the presentation you see, that is actually a mini amphitheater. So there's room for presentation there that students can be outside of the classroom, having a way to communicate outside of the walls of a classroom. That's what this is all about in this particular photo, is the understanding that students can communicate and learn amongst themselves, and also relating back to something that Mike mentioned earlier, the sense of ownership. This is an idea that students take control of their activity from day to day and how they not only communicate through their work to each other, but having a sense of responsibility to get the tasks that they need to have done. With expressive communication, we understand that we can express in different ways and we can create more complex spaces. You can see that the students are still learning, that there's a teacher in front, but to have the different connections of all of these different, you have the natural light outside, you have a space upstairs that you can see what's happening. It's almost as if the programmatic functions of this space are talking to each other. And the students are immersed in all of that. Think about the work environments that we're in now. You're not just in four walls with one person talking in front. You're getting information from all different aspects. And we can design schools to accentuate that real world experience. Yet on the antithesis of that thought, we also know that there needs to be specific spaces that are be small and specialized. This was definitely noted in the Gather conversations, is that these small individual spaces that are for individual learning experiences for students that need it and teachers that can provide it, these kind of spaces were lacking. So these are the kind of things that we really understood through our conversations in the Gather portions last month, that we know we need these. This particular one, it's not necessarily a music room, but it allows our little friends here to be able to express themselves quietly and calmly with a teacher in front. Notice how she's not wearing shoes. So these are the type of atmospheres that we know we can provide for all of our different types of learners. Our next poll question: do you believe it is important to support diverse learning styles in a variety of learning environments? This photo that you see here, again, goes back to control, except in control amongst how students can control themselves. This is about control of the space. So providing the epitome of control of where you sit, the comfort level you wish. You can sit in comfy chairs, you can sit in tall chairs, you can sit in short chairs that move. You can change the lighting, you can change the doors, you can change the audio visual. It's all about control of the space to communicate is efficiently and effectively as you can. Yet we know we need to provide opportunity for focused communication. So when you see these, notice that there's the larger classroom space on the other side. Sometimes there are the different parts of curriculum and the teacher has a specific component that they have to teach a specific small group or individual. And we know we need to provide those. And also the fact that just because you have more spaces doesn't necessarily mean you have more faculty. You have to have that visual connection so the teacher can respond to either one. Again, the idea of control, the comfort, the focused communication that can be provided, the connection of intimate conversation, and the direct connection to the circulation. The idea of this is impromptu conversation. So instead of having, I'm going to go to this designated space at this designated time, if two students are walking down the hall and they have a project that comes to mind, like, we got 5 minutes, we have our study hall, let's just grab a chair, let's figure it out. And then you move on, creating a similar environment to what we have now. We don't just march, in our day-to-day lives, we don't just march from one room to the next. We have these opportunities of impromptu conversations and how can we solve this problem together? Providing opportunity for student-staff connection, another major focus of, focused communication, pardon me. This particular conference room, it may have the image of a conference room, but this is actually the connection of the two major thoroughfare corridors. So, and this is close to the administration building. So when teachers have an opportunity to use this space to sit down with students, they have this perfect intersection within the facility. And not only that, this provides an opportunity for teachers to communicate amongst themselves. We heard that in our gather presentations and also in our experiences that we've learned that teacher communication is part of their well-being. And when they're in these silos of a classroom by themselves, they don't have a chance to express their frustrations, their successes, and providing these opportunities for these teachers to do that is something essential in communication. Global empathy. Our students will value and engage diverse cultures and unique perspectives through mutual respect and open dialogue while taking action to make the world more equitable and inclusive. From an educational design perspective, we take this, the two avenues that we took for this was welcoming, meaning everyone should feel welcome, everyone should feel safe, everyone should feel ownership of their school and of their space. And then an understanding of sustainable. And sustainable, we understand that can be sort of a challenging word of whether we're designing green or whatever it may be in regards to specifically environmental design, but it's more environmental awareness. Are we understanding the impacts that we have as individuals and as humanity, what it means to the world around us? And as an architect, I can say we are the provider of the thing that has the most emissions into the planet. So we have that understanding of what is our impact socially and humanly on the world around us. From a welcoming standpoint, we get to create an entry of historical context. When you walk into these buildings, where did they come from? How were they here? Why is this important to the community? We have a chance to express that. And an introduction of a sense of place. And also the idea of old buildings are bad. That's not what we're going for here. We have to be empathetic to history and where it came from and then understand how we can embrace those historical contexts into what we want our future buildings to be. One thing we heard in the Gather presentations is that these schools are a beacon of the community. I believe those were the exact words that we heard. And that you want to create a statement, almost like the front door of the community. How does the statement of your facility represent how you want people to see your school buildings? These are things to consider as you go through your ideas of how we can tie in the design of a building and how we think about the entry, and you notice the different aspects and the different textures and paths and different ways that people can get into this building. It represents a place of significance for this community and for this neighborhood. The welcoming portion is a sense of ownership as well. When you come up to this building, you know where you're going. Outside of the signage, notice the little blue door on the right. I can promise you that the little kids, when they come up to this early learning center, they're going through that door because that's their door and they love it. Showing an understanding of cultural differences. This is something that was mentioned to us very much in the gather portions as well, is that how we know we're all different. We know we have several languages and cultures and come from different places. How do we take that and welcome it and embrace it within our schools? And so this is part of the discussion, is how do we show that? How do we take it? Our last poll question for the evening. Do you feel it is important a connection to the global environment is included in education? The idea of sustainability shown here is the connection to nature, both in a visual and textual connection. You can see the colors, you can see the textures, that things are of natural fabrics, and that you have the connection to the outside and it's easily accessible. Outdoor learning can have a sense of place. What makes outdoor learning, and this is something that people talked about a lot in the gather sessions too, is how do we get students and teachers to teach outside? Well, we have to design them as a sense of place, as a sense of purpose. As a student, I remember outdoor learning meant we sat in a square in the soccer field. No one did anything but pulled the grass out. So if we create a sense of place within the site of our schools and actually create purpose, they can be very successful. Opportunity to connect how our work connects to nature. This is a STEM lab that you see has direct access to the outside. So instead of, again, the thought of a silo of creating this one thing of here's where I'm learning and this is the way it's going to be, you have that connection to get outside and make it a tangible educational experience. Understanding nature is being immersed in nature. So when you have an opportunity to present an outdoor learning experience, you have these natural colors, these natural textures, these natural connections to the natural environment. And then this is a conceptual picture, but it's part of that STEM lab, but it shows a direct connection of what we do as humanity and how can it affect the world around us. So there was a concern also in the gather discussions about food deserts. Create part of your educational environment that can incorporate the understanding of how food is produced and what it takes to create it and what it means to consume it. And again, cause and effect. How do we eat? Where does our food come from? And then the potential of the health and wellness approach of student-run spaces. Again, back to the fact of ownership, allowing the students to have ownership of this is my garden. I made this. This is going to be delicious because I made it. And again, immersion in a global setting, in a natural setting, it should be thought out. It should be designed. You notice these students are sitting on what were tree stumps, and they're reflecting on a place immersed in nature. These are the kind of spaces. If you do decide, if the outdoor learning, it should be designed to be acclimated in the real life natural setting. Now with that, you've seen what classrooms can be. Please take the reactions to your breakout rooms for further discussion. We are excited to hear what you have to say. That is the conclusion of our presentation. I appreciate your attention. And with that, I hand it back to the regional co-chairs.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Pretty soon we're going to head into our breakout rooms. Some of the things that we will consider are the 3 pillars from the portrait of the graduate, including adaptability, communication, and global empathy. How do those spaces yield to those 3 pillars? And what are some of our thoughts related to the images and the presentations and things that we've seen tonight? Some of the questions that you will specifically look at tonight is how can the corridors and cafeterias become adaptable and agile learning spaces? What kinds of flexible furniture is needed and can improve focus, communication in the classroom, STEM laboratories and/or libraries? And then how will we use our outdoor spaces to facilitate global empathy? So with that, our Zoom moderators are going to organize us into breakout rooms. You received a Zoom link prior to, so we want you to hop into those breakout rooms. We'll facilitate some conversation and then someone will report out. So at this time, we are going to join those rooms and listen to one another and collaborate and join together with our perspectives, okay? So we will see you back in a little while. So at this time, please join your rooms.
I hate to ask a not great question. However, which room do we go to?
You should see something on your screen that says join a room. Did you see the pop-up?
It just came up.
Okay, there you go. Thank you for your question. All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, welcome back. Thank you for everything that you've been doing in the breakout sessions. The conversation or the breakout room has been robust. I'm going to ask someone from that group if you would like to share with us some of the things that came out of that discussion.
I think Madison will be sharing that on behalf of the breakout group, but this is Juwanza Moore speaking. But some of the things that I picked up out of the breakout group was modernizing the schools, using the outdoor learning instruments that was being utilized on the videos from the inside of the door. Teachers from Woodcrest who was in the group spoke of how high of a use that sliding door would be in the hallways of Woodcrest, and also creating that community involvement. Another thing was the equipment being used, modern desks, adding couches, creating some more seats and seating that's more modernized for the teachers and students to create a better learning environment. It will create more of a, as James Raglin said, a helpful classroom management from the teacher's perspective, and as well as also look at creating that teacher to student ratio. Another thing was we discussed was the global and the stewardship of creating gardening space, community food deserts can be tackled by utilizing some of our local gardening spaces. And then I'll let Madison kind of tune in from there.
Thank you. So when we talked about the second question, which was about how we will use corridors, we discussed possibly using areas that are close to the classroom, but still outside of the classroom for other students to work on projects and things like that. So the teachers are still able to monitor them, but not hover. And for communication, we can have tables with wheels, which will help students move around more, talk more. And some of the stuff Juwanza Moore had said, which was couches and things like that. Also, for the third question, we talked about having a garden space for the community to use and for students to work on. And then we want to make sure that the garden spaces are all over Columbus City schools, and that it's not only just one school that has it, but multiple schools. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Madison. Thank you, fellow co-chair Jawanza Moore. We want to make sure that we have recorded some of the feedback on the Google Forms. Madison, are we good with that? With incorporating some of the feedback? And I know there was someone who was a scribe in each of those groups, because that is going to be shared as a part of the master document. Were there any other things that we needed to highlight from the conversation, or you think was possibly missed? Madison, are we good?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Madison. Thank you, Jawanza. Then thank you everyone for your feedback in this evening. Again, all of this will be as a part of the conceptual thinking and ideas that help us to build out the facility master plan. At this time, are there any questions, comments, or final thoughts? And feel free to drop those in the chat as well. If we can answer them, we will try to, because we still have the architectural team on. We still have board member Raglin on. Are there any questions or things that we need to address?
Thank you, Mrs. King. And I want to thank the entire leadership team, as well as every single participant in tonight's conversation. I was in on the breakout session that Madison led, and it was a very rich discussion. Thank you so much, all of you, for your input. I would just charge all of us to bring 2 or 3 people with us for the next conversation that we're going to have, because the more the merrier. I think we had some really good feedback today, and I was pleased to see that our teachers are here and with us and giving some really quality input on the learning space based on some knowledge that they have already gleaned, as well as doing some vision casting for us. And if we can get more and more folks involved, I think we're really going to round into the type of district that we want to see for every single child here in the city of Columbus. So again, thank you for being a part of this. Thank you, Mrs. King and Mr. Moore, Madison, Ms. Collins, all of our leads for making this happen tonight. And I look forward to seeing everyone at our next community engagement session.
Thank you, board member Raglin. I want to let everyone know that the next community conversation is going to take place on June 24th.
I think Dr. John has something to say down there.
Okay, come on, Dr. John.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to piggyback on board member Raglin's comment, because we're at the stage of the process where we're trying to get the community involvement and the community input. And, one of the things that has been said about Columbus City Schools for years is that we never take the time to get the community involved on the front end before decisions are made. And with this process that the Board of Education has created with Leggett, we are really trying to get your feedback on every step of the process. And so I know it's kind of tedious right now because we're not talking about a lot of the sexy, fun things, but we are talking about important things, because the portrait of a graduate is the foundation of the future for Columbus City Schools, and making sure that everything we do support our students to achieve those portrait of a graduate attributes and characteristics. And one of the important support systems for achieving that is how the school building is designed and how it functionally supports teaching and learning every day in our classrooms. And so as Ms. Martin King has already said, and as Mr. Raglin has already said, and Mr. Moore, have said, thank you all very, very much for coming out tonight to support this effort. And please, please grab another person or two and bring them along to the June meeting, because we will discuss the final 3 attributes of the portrait of a graduate. So we covered 3 today. We're going to cover the final 3 at the June meeting. Okay, so thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Stanford. As Dr. Stanford stated, the June meeting will be the last ones that will be covered, and the last 3 pillars are creativity, critical thinking, and technology. So at that meeting, we'll deal with creativity, critical thinking, and technology. The planning committee, we have the June meeting, and then the planning committee will meet on Wednesday, May 26th. And you can tune into that and see how that conversation goes. Because again, just to echo what Dr. Stanford and Board Member Raglin are saying, is that we want the community involved. So that is going to be on May 26th, and you can tune into that virtually to watch and see what happens at that meeting on May 26th. All the regional co-chairs will be there, the student leaders and the Facility Master Plan Committee Chair, Jim DeGrom, will be there. So you can tune into that. Tell your friends and family. And again, the next time that we will convene in this way is going to be on June 24th from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. as we discuss those final pillars. So thank you for joining us. Board Member Raglin, do you have any closing thoughts, or my co-chair, before we sign off for this evening?
No, well said, Dr. Stanford. Well said, Mrs. King. That's it for me. I'm sorry, I must have interrupted someone. Please forgive me.
It's okay. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nambula Alphonsine. I'm working with ETSS as a bilingual liaison. So I'm here to represent my community, because I'm working with Rwandese community and those people who speak French and Swahili. I'm from Congo, and I joined this meeting because I know our parents also supposed to join this meeting. And I'm a part of the parent, because my kids are going to Columbus City School also. And I know the parents have many questions. And I think in this zone, the family will be able to share their question, to ask their questions, so that they can get their answer. So I don't know if they will get that opportunity to ask all the questions they have.
Board Member Raglin, I'm going to yield to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, and thank you for joining us today, Ms. Alphonsine. I am really, really pleased to hear our partnership with ETSS has expanded to allow you to join us here today. And please thank Dr. Seleshi for me the next time that you see him. Yes, and that is precisely why we need them to join us on the 24th. And one of the things that you may consider, ETSS has done a really good job of galvanizing certain communities within particular schools. And you have a very unique communications apparatus with those families that you are serving. And so if there is an opportunity for us to craft language specific messages for the communities that you are serving on a daily basis within your schools that are in Region 2, we will craft invitations for them so that they may be able to join us for the next meeting on the 24th and make sure that they are able to get out for everything else that we're doing throughout this process. And so the short answer to your question is absolutely yes. We welcome all of our students and families that speak varying languages into these discussions, and there will be opportunities for them to engage with answering questions and getting their questions addressed throughout this process.
And if I can piggyback on to Board Member Raglin's comments, we also have designed this process so that if we have enough, for instance, with you, if we have enough French-speaking participants, they would have their own breakout room with a translator in the room to speak to them in their native language and get their feedback in their native language. It's just unfortunate we didn't have enough people speaking French, for instance, to be able to have that separate breakout room. And so again, if we have enough people, we can set this up so that the breakout room is designed specifically to that language, and we will have a interpreter in that breakout room to facilitate the conversation.
Okay, thank you. That's good. I understand. I try to talk to my community, and some was able to join this evening, but they are working a second shift, so they couldn't. So I'm trying to talk with other people if they will be able to join on 24th. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
You are
Hey, Board Member
welcome.
Raglin, if you close us out, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Once again, I appreciate you all being here. We will see you next month. Take care and happy graduation for those of you who are graduating. Congratulations. Bye now.